The Sikha we will be learning is the second Sikha for Parsha Shmini in the Sichas Chelik Chov Beis. The Sikha also is a hadron, a siyum, as it says in the star. Under the Sikha, star is on the keppel, on the title, and it says that this is also a siyum of Seder Taras of Mishnayis. And also, since Taras is the last Seder of Mishnayis, it's a siyum on the whole Shas Mishnayis. But it's connected to Parsha Shmini. The letzte Mesichte from the Shisha Sidre Mishnah, the last Mesichte of all six Sdorim, six Halokim of Mishnayis, which is Mesichtes Uktzin, redt wegen die Prote Dini von Tumas Eichlin, von Tumas Mashkin, V'shteim Parsha Seinu. Talks about the dinim of impurity, ruchnisdik, spiritual impurity, which is tumah, of food and of liquids. That's what the Torah talks about here in Kapitel Yud Aleph, Posek Lamed Dalet. There are different halachas in the tumah if something that's solid, food solid becomes tumah, and something that's liquid, they're different halachas. So the Parsha talks about it. So in the end of the Mishnayos, it talks about it, about these different halachas of tumah. And the letzte halacha from the Mesichtes, and the actual last halacha of the Mesichte halacha is these words: Chala is dvash. When you have honeycombs, honeycombs have honey in it. The way you get it out, you first decide to do it, obviously, and then you smoke the bees out, and then you crack open the beehive, and then you get the honey out. So the question is, when does it have a din of liquid? While it's inside the honeycomb, it doesn't have a din of liquid. But when it comes out, it has a din of liquid. So the tumah that it gets as liquid is from at one point when it comes out. When does it start? When does it start getting the tumah with the halachas of liquid, of mashkim? As soon as he thinks, the owner decides that he's ready to do it, and right away, then already becomes mashkin. Like according to another version, it's not yaharher, which means to think. Yicharcher means to steep, to smoke him out. But this is all before it actually came out. And Bezillah says, no, when does it become mashkin, liquid? When you crack it open. You actually get it out, then it becomes liquid. So the Rebbe explains, B'shamay holds, as gleich wie der Mensch ist mahare b'machshavte lirdis advash, as soon as the person thinks in his mind to take out the honey, bakumt es adin mashke, so it gets a din of liquid. When it's tome, betumas mashken, it becomes tome, the tume of the way mashken become tome. According to Bezillah, is different. It says, metamem shemashken esh mishes rasik. When does it become mashken? When does it become liquid? In order to become tome with the laws of liquid, only when you crack it open, then it actually becomes liquid. That's when it has the din of tumas liquid. In the Mishnah, further on in the Mishnah, the next Mishnah, the last Mishnah for the Mishnah, last Mishnah in Mishnayos. Before we said it was the last Mishnah, but there was the last halacha. And after that is a Mishnah, which is the actual last Mishnah, but that's not halacha. The last Mishnah from the Shisha Dorim, from this Mishnah, from the sixth Dorim of Mishnah, is stated like this, says like this. Rabbi said, in the future, Hashem is going to make inherit every tzaddik 310 worlds. And the simple pshat is, this will be reward for the tzaddikim, for their aveyas Hashem, for being tzaddikim. Like it says, that Hashem says, for all those that love me, I will make him inherit yesh. Yesh is Yud Shin. The Gematria, 310. So from here we learn out that he's going to give him 310 worlds. They say, Mamalei, and I'll fill their Eiser, I'll fill their storage. Omer Reb Shimon said something else. All that in the same last Mishnah. Hashem did not find a vessel that should contain a blessing for the Eden, only peace. Like it says, Hashem gave his nation strength, which is the Torah, and Hashem will bless his nation with peace, with shalom. So he says, from here we see that peace is the biggest bracha. That from Bashlein, the Rebbe says we have to understand. What's the shaykhs from the last Mishnah? What's the connection between this very last Mishnah? The Mamorim for Reb Shua Leib and Reb Shimon Mechalafta, the two statements of Reb Shua Levi who said that Hashem is going to make every tzaddik inherit 310 worlds. And the Reb Shimon Mechalafta said the greatest bracha Hashem could give Yidden is Sholem. What connection does that have to the Mishnah Shalaf, to the Mishnah before it? Which in the Mishnah before it is the pluk that's Vishma Shammai Mesila, but Chalas Vash. The argument of Shammai Mesila concerning the honeycomb when it becomes a din of mashke. The Rambam and noch Meforshim, the Rambam and other Meforshim explain it like the Rosh and the Rav, the Bartanura, answer this question. They say like this: the fish hishlin called in halacha. Since by the time you come to the last halacha Mishnah, it's basically the end of all Mishnayos, of all halachas of Mishnayos. So he's telling us all the halachas. Now we finished all the halachas. So now he finishes up with telling us the reward. What will be the reward for all this? Because this is the end of the Mishnayos, which means telling us what to do. And a person who keeps everything that it says in the Mishnayos, keeps all the Torah, all the halachas, is that tzaddik. So he continues. The last thing after that is what will be the reward? This will be the reward. This says the Mishnah taken can hamshir beteichen to the Mishnah shefanel. True, according to the Rambam, this last Mishnah in it, what contents of the Mishnah has nothing to do to the previous Mishnah. It's an end, a finish off, a conclusion of all of Mishnayos, from the whole 6 Dorim, of all Shas. With the idea to teach us, to show us, Mishnah, when the Mishnah is finished, he wants to show us, the reward that tzaddikim will get, they learn and they keep everything that says in the Mishnah. Really, it does not have a connection according to that shot. But based on what we find in the Gemara many places, as man is mavayir and tamas michas from Mishnayos, I feel as a shtei and zuach hazun in besondere mesichtes, that the Gemara tries to explain the connection from one Mishnah to another, even if we're talking about a Mishnah in the end of Mesichte, in connection, and what's the connection the Gemara tries to explain to the beginning of the next Mesichte. So we see, even though they seem to have, shouldn't have a shaycha, they're two different Mesichtes. Nevertheless, the Gemara looks for a connection. Certainly, when in the same Perek, you have 2 Mishnayos next to each other, certainly there has to be some connection. So there is a place, what the Rabbi is not saying, but the Rambam says is not the real answer. It's answer, but there's still a place to look, and to explain the shaychus from the same Mishnayos. What is the connection between the two? Even though the reason of the Rambam is the real reason, that's strong. The reason is that he wants to finish off with the reward for the tzaddikim. So, nevertheless, al kaponim lahamtig, to make it gishmaket, to make it better to understand, we should look for a connection between the two Mishnayos. The Mishnah of the Machlekes B'Shamai B'Sila by the Chalas Vash, to the last statement of Shuma Levi B'Shul Mechalafta. Yeshleimer, so the Rebbe says, that the Teicha Mishnah Smucha Tzum Sima B'Shnai Binyas Chana Mishnah, that the contents of the Mishnah, which is close to the very last one, which talks about the schar of mitzvahs, which is the pluk that's between B'Shamai and B'Sila and Chalas Vash, the argument between B'Shamai and B'Sila concerning the honeycomb, is connected to the concept of schar mitzvahs, which is under Mishnayos. In other words, it's not just that we spoke certain all the halachas. Now we're finished. Now we're going saying that there is a schar. He's saying the last Mishnah, which talks about the argument of B'Shamai and B'Sila by the honey, that is connected to the inyan of schar that is the next Mishnah. Now the Rebbe didn't say it. How? We'll see. To explain that, the Rebbe says, first let me explain what the Meforshim that we mentioned before said. That Meforshim said that the reason that this mission is the end, to teach us about the schar, the reward that the tzaddikim will get. So I want to explain what the Rebbe said. L'chura is nicht verstanden. That's not so understood. You're saying like this. We're talking about tzaddikim who did everything already that's in the Mishnah, all the halachas. So we're telling you now the schar. That's the end. The last thing is telling you the schar. He said, I don't understand. The Retz doch wegen tzaddikim. Talking about tzaddikim. Und wer sie halt nicht schön beim Sehen von Shishis in the Mishnah. Tzaddikim were already at the end of the 6 Dorim of Mishnahs, which means Shleimus believe that Torah, that they're complete in Torah. They know the whole Mishnahs. Klolos HaTorah Shabbat. And the whole Mishnahs tells you the general, all of Torah Shabbat, of the oral Torah. And we're talking about tzaddikim, and when they learn it in a special way, so they really, really reach a very high level. The movement, so it's obvious as they halt to shenk by the Meif Navei, they Tzivya Mishnah noch Beseden Ezekiel. So certainly they're holding at such a high level of what it says earlier in Mishnayos. You say the Ezekiel. What does it say? That's in Pirkei Avos. It says a person should serve his master, which means Hashem, not in order to get reward. So these tzaddikim who finished the whole Mishnah is for sure are holding at that level, that they should learn Torah and do mitzvahs, not for reward, nor nitzu lipschar, not for reward, nor lishmo, for the sake of Hashem, for the sake of the mitzvah itself. So the question that's going to come up here is, why would we tell these tzaddikim the reward? We finish it off in the reward as if, that's the goal, is to get to the reward. After you finish it, you get the reward. That's not their goal. That's not why they're doing it. If they're really tzaddikim, that's not why they're doing it. This way we go for more. The posik was gebracht in the Mishnah Gufa zogt, in the posik that is in the Mishnah, the Hanchil Eihave Yesh, it says Hashem will make inherit those that love me. He will give him Yesh, which is Yesh is Shinyud, is 310 worlds. Divas Dinan, so we're talking about people, Divas Dinan, the Meibish Meyave, it says Eihave. Hashem is giving this reward to those that love him. Was das meint, with the Rambam is Mavai Baruch, the Rambam explains, what does it mean loving Hashem out of Ahave? So the Rambam himself says this in Hilchas Shuvah, as a tu as a Rabbi Lishmo. Doing Meyave from love means you do it Lishmo, Nish Lishem Schar. Not they don't do it for the sake of reward, nor Eiso Emes B'nei Shemes. They do the truth. Torah mitzvah is the truth because it's true, because that's what you're supposed to do. That's what Eibushter wants. So the people that we're talking about here is, we titled them with Eihave, that we describe them as loving Hashem, and the Rambam said loving Hashem means that they reach that level. Emes takader was his emes b'nei shemes. Even though the Rambam himself says that these levels, the person is in such a high level that he does the truth because it's truth, is muftach with the Rambam Zogdort, and is guaranteed. The Rambam himself says this. Asof the end will be that the good will come, the reward, he'll get the reward. So the Rambam himself says that these people will get reward. Says true, they'll get reward. Aber nicht das ist die schlimmste welche strebt zu der Greifen seiner Welt. But this is not the highest level that the person, these tzaddikim, are looking towards to reach. By a Neved Hashem Ave, if you serve Hashem out of love, is the inyan from Sleif Ateva love of the glow, the fact that eventually he will get reward. Not a dover tofel, it's a side thing. It's a secondary thing. Und der Rike bei ihm is was Zeichen given to Dinja the Meibishim Lishmo. The main thing by them is that you merited to serve Hashem Lishmo. So this is what we're talking about. These type of people we're talking about here. Since the goal and the main way you should serve Hashem, do Torah mitzvah is Lishmo for the sake of the mitzvah itself. For Hashem, not. You don't care about, this is not what you're doing it for, to get reward. These masim, how does it fit up? I'm seeing for now the Mishnah. By the end of all Mishnayis, but das meint in a matzah von Tachlis Shlei Mishnayis Avidas Hashem. That we're talking about a person who's the highest level in serving Hashem, because he's already at the end of the whole Mishnayis, which means he's a person that does everything right. So the Chsime Zayin, the end shall be Nitas Nafshik Shura Bavas Hashem, not about something that the Amos Loshen says that his nefesh, his soul, is tied to loving Hashem. So it doesn't finish with that. Nor it ends off that his reward will be that he'll get the 310 worlds. As Gemul v'schar for Avodas mitzvahs. That this is going to be a reward for a state of mitzvahs. Does it fit that the tachlis of all the things that the tzaddik does is to reach the reward, when his whole purpose in life is not caring about reward? Most Mizogis we have to say that this idea that Hashem is going to make inherited 310 worlds, was Retzich in the Mishnah, which the Mishnah is talking about, is not an inyan from schar mitzvahs. It's not reward for mitzvahs in the general understanding, the way we understand it, which is a tashlum for Avedes, for Nelames, for Avedel Hashem, that it's the Eibishter is paying, giving him all these worlds because he served Hashem. That's not what it means, we must say. But this is a hecher shleimus ba'avede. This is part of the work, the Avedes Hashem that he has. This is reaching a higher level in his Avede. And aliyah zu welcher der evet mi'abed der grecht al der Avedose. You reach a higher level that this is the tzaddik who serves Hashem Me'ave reaches through his Avede. This is part of the Avede. It's not a regular schar. Because some Poshup Shadatzim, this is schar. So he says, schar, why would we tell this, all the tzaddik who finished Mishnayis and does everything right, talk to him about the schar? That's not what he cares about. So obviously, this itself is part of his Avede, a level that he reaches. Und das ist in the Kudas HaShayches zwischen der Mishnah with the Mishnah Shalafanel. And this is the Nekuda. The Rebbe is not going to explain it in detail first. First, he's going to get the Nekuda. First, we got to get to the point. The point, this is the point of the connection between this Mishnah and the Geid, where the Tzaddik will get with the previous Mishnah, which is the Pluktesh, B'Shamai, B'Hillel, B'Chalas Dvash. The argument B'Shamai, B'Hillel concerning the honeycombs. What's the pshat? What's the general Nakuda connection? So since we just came to a conclusion that this giving the Elamis is part of Aveda, that the tzaddikim will reach this high Aveda, which is hinted in the sinion of getting the 310 Elamis, that fits to the concept of the Dvash. Ma'atayim al-derech as ha'aremes was the letzta halachas in Mishnah, Chitum Mishnah. One of the reasons, not the simple pshat, but the remes, which the deeper meaning in why the last halachas in the Mishnah, which is Chitum Mishnah, this seals off, finishes off the Mishnah. We know that with the end, everything follows then. The end is the subtotal of everything that we had before. Why is it about bees and honey? So one of the reasons given is while dveirim zainen, bees are kibir chazal meramas of shleimus aved aved lishmo. Bees represent, as the chazal say, that the person, when he reaches the highest level of aved lishmo, is hinted in bees. And Kilakama Sif Zayin later, Sif Zayin will explain. I'll just say a drop of it because the chazal tell us that Yidden are compared to bees. Which way? Just like bees, whatever they make, all the honey that they make, they produce, is all for their master. A Yid, whatever he does for the Eibishter. So the bees represent Aveda Lishmo. And now that we said that the bees here are part of what it says afterwards about the Aveda Lishmo, that's why it talks about bees. But the Aveda is Achon of Akdom. So this Mishnah, which talks about the bees, is the introduction to the next Mishnah, which talks about Hashem making all tzaddikim inherit these Shai Elamis, which, as we explained, the Shleimus of Elchem and the Grecht Naveda, that the last Mishnah, which talks about the reward they get, which is not reward, it's reaching a very high level of Lishmo, of being close to Hashem. So before that, it talks about the bees, because the bees represent that. When the Svaris in Pluktes B'Shamai B'Hillel, in order Plukte B'Chalas Vash, and the argument B'Shamai B'Hillel, in this idea with the Chalas Vash, we have the argument. So let's skip the the dashes for a second. We'll go right back to it. So their argument, let's go to the next column. That their argument is connected, is the difference in what is the general approach, the purpose, why the Eibishter created human being, a Yid down in this world, was because we know every Yid was created only to serve his master, to the Eibishter, like it says later. So the last is the shleimus of the person. Since he serves, this will show what is the teichen of the person being down here, which is negeya also to the shleimus, the completion, the highest level a person could reach his aveda. So therefore, right after, first we're talking about generally the Nakudis, we're talking about bees, and that is represents Yidden doing Lishmo. And that's the Akdama to the next Mishnah, which talks about the Shleimus of Yid Lishmo, as the Rabbi will explain. And by first having in the bees itself, we have a Machlekes B'Shamai B'Hillel, that besser verstandig the Sima Mishnah, this will explain more the end of Mishnah is what they should do. And the Rabbi here gives in what is the argument of B'Shamai B'Hillel, and that will be the introduction to the next Mishnah. So we'll go back to the dashes. Vosis, the argument of Shammai B'Hillel and Chalas Bash is Vigeret Kama Pom, and the Rebbe said, like I said many times, verbunden mit Mchilu Kloli zwischen Zeir Shittas. There's a general point in many arguments with Shammai B'Hillel. And this is one of them that fits to that. And what's the argument? Do we follow everything, the potential? That's the most important part. Or it goes after B'Peil, after the actuality when it happens. And that fits here too. When there's a question of potential and actuality, we follow the potential. Therefore, B'Shama holds that as soon as you think about it, so it's potential already from happening, or at least when you smoke it out, so it's potential. Potential, it's mashke. It's far from actually being liquid. But it's the potential. And B'Shamai holds the potential is more important. So B'Shamai says already then it becomes Tomei in the level of Mashke. When B'Hillel holds, we follow after the actuality. Und der Riber hat das nicht kein din Maschke, therefore it doesn't have a din of liquid. Bis es wird Maschke bepeil, b'sheirasik. Only when it actually becomes liquid. When is that? When you break it open and then it comes out, it's liquid. So this nekuda of the machlekes b'shamai b'zilil in this Mishnah, whether we follow b'kayach or follow b'peil, is important concerning to explain what is the purpose of eating this world, as we'll see later on. Not this, not to do with schar. What is the purpose? And the next Mishnah, which talks about Hashem giving the Shai Elamis, is also talking about the purpose of a person in this world, and they're connected, and then we'll see as we see the details. So the Rebbe starts explaining like this. Loshen HaMishnah B'chis, Loshen Ktsoro B'tachas Adigd, Loshen of the Mishnah, which the Rambam says is written very shortly and exact, very precise. And every word is exact. The word here is, Hashem is going to make inherit tzaddikim, every tzaddik, 310 worlds. So the Chura Vipas lahanchil. The question is, how does the word lahanchil, aninyan shal Yerusha, is inherit? What kind of inheritance here? Yerusha is not verbunden mit der Aveide from the Yerush. We're saying this comes for the Aveide that the tzaddikim do. The Yashana, to inherit, has nothing to do with anything that you do. The one that inherits, the heir, doesn't do anything to deserve it, to receive it. Eber is nor geboren geworden. If he was born a relative which falls into the category of an heir who inherits, he's a bederech hamele Yiddish. Automatically Yashin, automatically inherits. There's not much to do about it. He's when it's retzich wegen matnes chorim shel tzadikim. So when talking about the schar tzadikim, because in Posha Pshat of the Mishnah, we're talking about the schar tzadikim. So when it says about talking about the reward of the tzadikim, should have said something Hashem will give. Giving means you could deserve it and he'll give it to you. But why does he use the lashon? He will make you inherit. That to me is not the question is even stronger. There's selber Maimer wird gebracht im Mesichtes Sanhedrin. The same Maimer Chazal is brought in Mesichtes Sanhedrin. Und dort steht there Take says, that Hashem in the future will give every tzaddik 310 worlds. So we see that word, that expression fits. So why does it say Lahanchel? The explanation is like this. That's exactly, there's a difference in the way it's brought down in Mesichtes Sanhedrin and the way it's brought down here. The Maimer in Mesichtes Sanhedrin, the statement, this same statement, the way it's in Mesichtes Sanhedrin, which a Nameir said, their taka the pshat is, as a reward, the Eibusher will give the tzaddikim 310 worlds. Und der Rebbe sagt das, and says will give. And there is no problem why he talks about schar, because they will get schar, as we said before. The whole question was over here, when we're talking at the end, when it comes to tachlis, to the goal is schar. But over there is not talking about the goal, he's just talking the fact. The fact is that tzaddikim deserve schar, and the Eibusher will give this tzaddikim the schar. But in their Mishnah, was kumt alsim v'chesim ha-mishnayis, but in this Mishnah, which comes as an end, a conclusion of the whole Mishnah is, that's not talking about push it, you'll get reward. As we said, as we said before, it's talking about the shleimus, the complete highest level that the tzaddik reaches when he serves Hashem meyave. And that's the end, not as reward. Und the Riber is Reb ben Leib medayek. Reb ben Leib was a Tane. So Tane is part of the Mishnayos. So he's medayek, osid HaKadosh Baruch Hu lahamchil, Hashem will make you inherit. Odish Leimus is Bedukas Begid Yerusha, because what the Mishnah is, what's Rabbi Shua Levi, the Mishnah trying to tell us that the highest level will be getting the Shai Elamis, means, as we said, that's the highest level you will reach in closeness to Hashem. That is similar to Yerusha, similar to inheritance. What's got to do with inheritance? So the Rebbe explains, in the gay Yerusha is you do it with the Ragachover is Mavai. When it comes to inherit, the Ragachover explains, everyone knows this, as a Yerish, and nit atzveite mitzias, as vakum techosen for the Merish. When you inherit, it's not you're a separate entity that receives possessions, property, from the one that's making you inherit. It's not like when you sell something. All of this is a change of ownership. First it belonged to this person, now it belongs to the other person. When you yarshin, the Ragashova says it's not the pshat like that. It's not a separate person, like by matone or by when you earn something, you buy something, it goes from one mitzias, from one person to another person. Nor beloshen akosa by Yerusha, by inheritance, the posting says tachas avisecha yibenecha. In your place, the place of the fathers will be the children. The Yeresh state b'mokim hameresh. The Yeresh, the one that inherits, is the same one. Like by regular Yerusha, when you have a father passes away and his son Yarshins, it's not the pshat. It's not the pshat that now, like he gave him a present or he gave something over. No, he is like the Father. It's all one. Ayerish is ein zach mit meirish. The one that inherits the heir is one entity with the one that gives it to him. Etzemav, like the Lashon of the Rakachover, the son is the etzem of the father. The essence of the father. That's when they gave regular Yerusha. So the same applies by Yidden. The Shleimus was Vatuvgeton, the mitzvahs Ayid and Teinas Mekayim mitzvahs, the completion, the highest level that a Yid could accomplish by learning Torah and doing mitzvahs is was Yisrael Eraisa Vekuchebrich Chulachand. It says that in Zayar that the Torah and the Eibush Yidden are all one. So it's not that you're separate entity. You reach such a high level that you feel that you are one with Hashem. Like it says in another place in the Zayar, Gimel Miskashen Dobedod, got three things that are tied together. That the three things, the Eibishter and the Torah, and the Yidden become one. This is by learning Torah. The same thing doing by keeping mitzvahs, which is also from the word tzavset. See, mitzvah means commandment, but also means connection. A Yid reaches this level that he becomes one entity with the one that gave us the Torah and commanded us the mitzvahs, which is the Eibishter himself. And this is the deeper meaning where it says that the Eibishter will make inherit those that love him. Yesh. So yesh is used shin yud as the amount of elamas that they get. But there's another nakuda yesh which fits this whole thing. The Rambam is mavayra, the loshin yesh. Rambam says the word yesh here. Yesh means being. A mitzi is a being. So yesh vice the mitzias hatmidish hashem latachlis refers, that shows on the entity that's constant, that has no goal, which means an essential entity. When we say he will make the Ehavim, the ones that love him, he'll give him yesh, he'll make him inherit yesh, means to those that love me, I will make him inherit the yesh hamuchla. Yesh hamuchla means the essential yesh, the shempla being, the essence, the true being. Because the Rambam says any nefesh, any person that will be zeicha to Elam Haba will never stop. That means because he'll be connected to the Eibusher and never stops. So what the Mishnah is meaning according to the Rambam, what the Eibusher is going to give to the tzaddikim, connect them to the yesh hamiti. How could a creature which is limited, how could he connect to the true essence of the Eibishter's Metzias? A Metzias Hatmidis, he says something that's forever, that's there always. It doesn't mean only forever in time. Essentially, this is the true being. Which is eternal and has no limits. So how could a person, which is a Baal Gvul, contain or connect to the Eibishter who is Bli Gvul? That's why the Pasuk says, he will make inherit those that love him, this yesh. Eden Bakumen is not als Makabel von Andes. Eden get this connection to the Eibishter, not as somebody who receives something from somebody else who gives him. That there is a second entity who gets it from the other entity who gives it to him. Nor Eden seine das Neichel als Jedish. Eden inherited because they are the heirs. Was is ein Sach mit Meirish. Just like by Yerusha, by a person, the one that inherits is one, like we said before, not he gets it from the one that gives and makes him inherit. But he is one with him. Same thing here. That Yidden get it al Yerish. Yidden seine bonim lakadosh baruch hu. Yidden are like children to Hashem. So like a child inherits from his father, so he's not a separate entity. He is the entity of the father. When the Rebbe, therefore, b'shas Yid learn Torah is mekayim mitzvahs. So when the Yid learns Torah and keeps mitzvahs, vet nisgale v'eres ein mitzias mit an emes in yesh hamuchlet. So that's revealed how he becomes one mitzias with the true yesh, which is the mitzias hatmidis, the mitzias which is constantly, like it says, eisi atem like it says in Medrash, the Eibusher says, when you do a mitzvah, you're taking me, you connect yourself to me. So this means this. So now we understand why does he say the Lashon Lahanchil? Because this, as we said before, a level, not a reward. This is a level in how close you get to Hashem. The highest level, you become one with Hashem. And that's like the last thing we have in the Mishnayos, because this is the highest level a person can reach. And that's hinted in the Yesh, Yesh, that you get connected to the Yesh. And it comes in the form of inheritance, because you do inherit, you're one with Eibishter. This also explains the pleasure that comes out from this tzaddikim, because when it says The Eibishter will make keep every tzaddik shay elamis. What does that mean? Simple pshat. Was dosse the Pirish and David Shua Levi hostek Kodesh Baruch Hu hanchol tzaddik with tzaddik shay elamis. When the Pshutim Levi said, in the future Hashem will make inherit every tzaddik 310 worlds. What does that mean? With the Rambam is mavayis. The Rambam explains that was meant as the tainik from Elam Abo, that the pleasure that they will get when they come to Elam Abo, to the world to come, is 310 times a pleasure. We call it Anukas Elam Hazeh. Than all the pleasures of this world. So in this statement is hinted that this is a pleasure. So everyone wants to put it all together. Till now we're saying it's not a pleasure. Pleasure is a reward. We give you pleasure, you deserve it. But it does say that this is what it means. The Rambam says this is what it means. The Eibishter will give him great, great pleasure. But before we said what it means is not that the Eibishter give him a reward. This is a level that they will reach. They will become one with Hashem. But now the Rebbe said, now we'll understand what it means. It doesn't mean that it will be the pleasure of the tzaddikim, the way they are, their own entity, they will have pleasure. Chassidus says, the nachas ruach lebeinach. In Lenivre, Chassidus, it says there's two types of pleasure. There's a pleasure that the Eibishter has and a pleasure a person has. So the way we explained before, that this is a level that they reach with one with Hashem. So the pleasure here is not the pleasure that they have, which Chassidus would refer to it, nachas ruach lenivre. The nivre, the creature, gets pleasure. The nachas ruach is read by Eden al schar. This is the pleasure that Yid gets as a reward. So as much as a Yid gets reward to have pleasure, but that's his reward, his pleasure. So that cares about him. That's his mitzias. But here it's not that. No, this is the tainuk for neighbors. This is the pleasure of Hashem, which is in Chassidus called nachas ruach lebeire, the pleasure for the Creator, the Eibishter's pleasure. K'maimer Chazal, the Chazal say that the Eibishter has pleasure when we do mitzvahs. Nachas ruach lefonai shemarti v'naser etzeni. That the Eibishter says, I have pleasure that I said and you did what I said. So here we're talking about the pleasure that comes out, that said that this means that the Eibishter is going to give the tzaddikim pleasure, and we're saying it means that they will be, this is a level they will reach. Yes, they will reach a level that the Eibishter's pleasure is their pleasure. Die Baal Eden seinen Einsach mit dem Meirish, since they're one, the Eden are one with the one that's making them inherit, giving them the inheritance, which means they are one with that. So they inherit the pleasure of Hashem. So it's true that this gives them, this is a pleasure, but not pleasure as a reward. Pleasure that they reach a level that Hashem's pleasure is their pleasure. When the Rambam is like Mavayat, the Rambam explains, Rambam explains that this, that the Shuma Levi uses a number of 310 is al derech ha'orabam. That just it's not, it doesn't mean it really 310. But if he emphasizes a tiny built-in book, but really it means pleasure. He says 310 times pleasure of the world. That's just an expression, but it really means believable pleasure. Why? Because it's the pleasure of Hashem. So everything fits together. That he means that the Eden will reach this high level, and in this high level they will have the pleasure of Hashem. That's the difference between reward that you get for mitzvahs and what we may say here, the Eibishter will make inherit. The reward we get for mitzvahs, he says, also that Kodesh Baruch Hu he'll give him. And here he's saying they will inherit. This is the difference. The pleasure that the person gets as a reward for his work. The fact that you get reward shows that you're an entity for itself. Obviously, you're a person that we have to pay you for your work, so it's you has to get paid. So when you have, so if the payment is the pleasure because we're paying you, is a tiny So how much could you give him? How much a creature, a creation, something from the creation could contain? So it's limited. So if it's al tzchar, it's limited. You can't get the infinite tainug of the Eibishter. But when our Mishnah, where it says the Eibishter will make him inherit, is a nachas ruach lebeire, is a pleasure of the Creator, the Eibishter, aninya from yesh hamuchlet, from the yesh hamuchlet, from the real yesh. But das is not the ininya from schar mitzvah. That's not reward for a mitzvah, because then you're a separate entity. But das is the etzema mitzvah, it's the mitzvah itself. And the Yid gets this as a we call it as a inheritance, because he's one with the Eibishter. Das is the time for was the hanchel yesh is le'avidavke, and this is why this giving this yesh is only to those that love Hashem. When can the rodem zukommen zu minyan from the hanchel yesh? When can a person come to this level, which is lahanchil, to become an heir that inherits, because you reach a level that you're no mitzias for yourself at all? It's only when you serve Hashem in the same way. As a trachtet, when you serve Hashem, you don't care about yourself at all, nor a tut in ganzen lishma for nebishes. When you do it completely, lishma for nebishes. Calls man der Adam tracht wegen anin shoschar. As long as the person does aved and thinks about the reward, or the wegen sich bechlal, or not after reward, but he thinks about himself. Zayin aliyah. Oh, he wants to reach Rabbi Leib, so he cares about himself in the good way. Fine, but as long as that happens, is nicht shaykh as soll werden ein Sach mit Yesh HaMuchlet. Mit Siyas Atmitis. He can't become one with the Yesh HaMuchlet, with absolute Yesh, and the Mitzias Atmitis, the Mitzias that's forever. Was is in ganzen Hecher von Geder Rav Nivroim. That's higher than Nivroim. And if he cares about himself, he's a Nivra, so he's still in the category of a Nivra. So he can't get that. Only when he serves Hashem, while he's serving Hashem, it's only Lishmo for the sake of David. It is nicht kemetzias for sich, is no entity for himself. Tracht nur wegen dem etzema mitzvah. He only cares about, thinks about the mitzvah itself. But the fun veder nachas ruach lefon shemartim nasel thing. That's what David gets the pleasure. The lashon is David says there's pleasure by me. In other words, he has pleasure because what the person does is only for the sake of the pleasure of David. Then you take David himself. You get it like an inheritance. But why? Because you are Eyaveh, because you serve Hashem, you love Hashem. And as we said before, the Rambam says loving Hashem means doing it only for the sake of Hashem. We find in Aloche as an emeser Eved, a real Eved. We're talking about the Eved Knaini, a Goyish Eved, who has a din of a real Eved. Eved al Petera Semes, Eved al Petera, according to the true Torah, which is true, is not kemetzias for sich. An Eved al Petera is not an entity for himself. So in ganze Metzias is Metzias Hoden. His whole Metzias is the Metzias of his master. In order 47, the Rebbe brings a Rashba in Kedushin. There he says, when the Gemara says, Vashekona end of Eved Kona Rabbi, whatever Eved, a slave, acquires, automatically goes to his master. So he explains, it's not the pshat, he acquires it. And then now it's the Eved. And since he's an Eved of the master, automatically from him, from the Eved, it goes to the master. No, when he takes it, he's taking it, the master is getting it, because he's not an entity for himself. So the same thing here also, that if you serve Hashem at Ave, you're like that Eved, that you don't care about anything. Your Metzias is the Metzias of David. And that's why you're able to get the Yesh HaMuchlet, you're able to get that Blikvul. Und das der Remes in dem, but the Mishnah Shalifneze, reden werden Keveres Dverim Chalas Vash. That's the Remes that the Rebbe said before, that the Mishnah is before this last of Lahan Chalei Avayesh. He's talking about bees, and Chalas Vash, and honey combs, which is from bees. While the Avede von Eden in dem Eifen von Lishmo is ongedeiht in dem, was Eden seinen zugeglichen geworden zu Dverim. Because this idea that Eden serve Hashem Lishmo is hinted in this idea that Eden are compared to bees. Steht the Medrash, that's the Medrash, kedvorim hoyibana. My children are like bees. Mahat veira says, kol mashem he misagelas, just like a bee. Whatever it gathers, all the honey it gathers is only for the master. Kach kol mash Yisrael misaglin. So too, what all that Eden gather for mitzvahs and ma'asim tevim, mitzvahs and good deeds, and misaglin lavi yishav hashemayim. They do it for David. Okay, mavura b'lechut Torah, and it says in Lechut Torah, the aveda beifazeh, that to do the Aveda in such a way that you're doing it only for the Eibishter, kommt von der Akora, is when you recognize, you understand, you realize that the whole purpose of why a person was created is not for the person himself. Even though it is for him, he gains a lot. He goes up such a high madrege by coming down here. That is just that is not the purpose really. Kim Lekvedi is for herself on David. Kimaimer Chazal, like the Chazal say, Anini Vreisi L'Sham I was created to serve my master. So the Alter Rebbe says there that the purpose is to be Lishmo. That's the purpose. He does mention, and that's important for furthering the Sikha, that he does have an Aliyah. It helps him too. He goes higher. But the Tachlis is not the Tachlis, is the head Leihave, and to be Lahanchel to reach that Madrege. The Sheikhs from their mission to Pluk this Bishamay Bezillo. Now, what we give all this beer, we could see understand the connection between the argument Bishamay Bezillo, Bekeich or Bepeil, whether we follow the potential, we follow the reality, the actuality, and it's negated to when the Dvash is called Mashkin. We'll see now the connection from that to the last Mishnah. By first explaining this. In that quote from Lukut Torah is clear, it's expressed as the person does reach through his Aveda, and he reaches a very high wondrous madrege. She's not a leizu levad, but just what he said. This is not the only goal. There's a better, more important goal. This is to be connected to Eibush and do it l'shmo. Is in them do achilek zwischen Shittas b'Shamai v'halten as lini baser b'keach and Shittas b'Zilla as lini baser b'peil. In this idea that even though the purpose is to do it for l'shmo, for the sake of Hashem, but this idea that there is an aliyah, a gain that the person gains for himself too, here will be a difference if we follow the Shita b'Shama, that the potential is the more important part, or we follow b'Hillel, that the actuality is the more important part. A vitiv derinyan the aliyah status mokim. How important is it? How much importance do we give to this aliyah that the Yid gets? Because this end of the mission is talking about really the tachlis, which is not the aliyah that he gets. That's already like a reward that he gains. But nevertheless, it's there. So how deep is how important is this part? Because that's not the iked. The iked is the one with Hashem. But how important is that? And that depends on whether we look at the potential or not. And he explains it like this. If we follow potential, that means that the most important part of everything that has these two stages, the main thing is the bekeach. It comes out. So when the neshama comes down here and actually serves Hashem, and that gives an aliyah to the person, as we said, but it's not something special. Why? Because the main thing we said before is the bekeach. According to B'Shamai, we're talking now. So if you follow the bekeach, that bekeach, the potential is there in the neshama before it comes down. So the main thing happens when the neshama up there has this potential. That's the main thing. So when it comes down here and does bepeil, it's something special, but that's not such a great thing because that's not dikir. Dikir is the bekeach. Noch mehr. In our case, it's not the pshat, the bekeach is more important. You don't be'emes, you don't need the bepeil at all. The bepeil is, usually you would say, bekeach is fine, but we need to have, let's test you. If it works, well, you do it. But here you don't have to have that bepeil, even for that purpose. Because it's clear, it's for sure, that every neshama will accomplish to fulfill its mission in this world. Like it says, nobody will be kicked away. No one will be pushed away. So we know bepeila will happen also. So as a bechine, as a test to see if it is going to work or not, we know for sure it will. And another thing, and that's even more important, but the Rebbe knows now it'll happen. And since the iked is the bekeach, and the bepeil is not that great, so according to B'Shamai, who holds bekeach, so there's nothing so special about the neshama coming down here for the aliyah of the yid, because the aliyah is there bekeach before. Comes out. Leib B'Shamai is nitoke nor zu sagen. According to B'Shamai, there's no place to say as the aliyah and the flow from the modem is anufte v'chidush, that the person will have an elevation and reach a higher level is such a new thing and such a special thing. Was to them that in the neshama has to come down here, bepeil, and serve Davish bepeil is not such a great thing, not such a special thing. Und das was in neshama is yered lamata. So and when the neshama does come down here, it's lagamani to the mili was vet to get under the neshama. It's completely has nothing to do with the fact that the neshama will gain. Nor so, what is the real purpose according to B'Shamai? Blaze l'sagel l'baleh, only to do for the man, just like the bee does everything for its master, for its owner. A yid comes down here just for the other part. We said the main part is that it comes down to serve, to become one with Hashem. That's why it comes down. The fact that it'll have an aliyah, that's very small things. Why? Because the iked is bekeach, and bekeach had already, and the bepeil is not so important. So the main thing that comes according to B'Shamai is only the kavanah from Eibishter, to fulfill the purpose of Hashem. Was nesava kadosh baruch hu liis ladira b'tachtenim. Eibishter wanted a dwelling place in this world. And for that meaning is not genug when the neshama bekeach tzamach and see, for that it's not enough bekeach for sure to say it's potential that you could make a dira b'tachtenim. No, der tachten that bepeil nishtanda werden zu seine dira liisbar. What Eibishter wants is that the low world should become a dwelling place for Hashem. Es muss sein a pull in them tachten. You have to work with the tachten, so it has to come down. But mainly read the neshama l'mata bepeil, so you have to have the neshama come down. So according to B'Shamai, when we have these two things, it comes down for the purpose of being one with Hashem. And then the gain itself. So the gain is not so special because B'Shamai, we said in the mission about the Tvash, that he says B'Keach is the Iker. We see that when you think about it, that already counts. If the B'Keach is the Iker, so this that the Yid will come down and do it as far as he's concerned to give him the Aliyah, that is there already B'Keach. So it has to be, the main thing is only for becoming one with Hashem, and that is through Dira B'Tachteinim. So that has to be B'Peil. Even according to B'Shamai, you have to have B'Peil. But according to B'Tzila, who says we follow the actuality, the reality, it comes out that the so it comes out by the neshama coming down here. So not only is it coming down for the purpose of connecting, becoming one with Hashem, even for its own purpose, which something that it didn't have before. See, according to B'Shamai, whatever happens down here, it had before. It had a keach, and the keach is important, very more important. So whatever it has is not such a big thing. But according to B'Tzila that follows the B'Peil, so coming down here is also something special for the neshama of its having its own aliyah. Because by coming down, then the neshama, the yid, uses up his abilities, his keches, to bring it down from potential to actuality. And according to B'Tzila, that's what counts. So you have to wait for the B'Peil. What's like B'Tzila, it does the rikah for yedidin, yedidin. According to B'Tzila, that's the main thing. Und der Riber, therefore, Leib bis Hillel, according to Hillel, even though, as we said before, everyone agrees, Hillel and B'Shamai, that the whole purpose, the main purpose why the neshama comes down is l'kveda yisborach, is for the Eibishter. Anini breisi l'shama sheskeni, I was created to serve my master, k'dei zu durchführen die Kavone von Dira B'Tachteinim. To make Dira B'Tachteinim, this is what the Eibishter wants, that's the main thing. Und das darf sein die Kavone von der Bodem Avidos. And that's what we said before the whole time. You have to think, doing what the Eibishter wants, which is Dira B'Tachteinim, that's what. Von deswegen, but still, according to B'Tzila, is ein Aveda Lamata Adinye was too fachidish echenim. But coming down also does something special in him as an entity for himself, in him that he gets an aliyah. Because before he didn't have what he has now. According to B'Shamai, he had already the B'Keah before. So whatever the B'Peil doesn't make a difference because the main thing is the B'Keah. But if the main thing is B'Peil, then he didn't have that before. So not only is it going to accomplish that you're going to be one with Hashem to do the Ratzon of Hashem, and that's it. Even for it, part of it is also that you will gain. And the Rabbi explained the Chiluk zwischen B'Shamai B'Tzila Gitech Hasbore in Zeya Plukte. Now there's another machlekes B'Shamai B'Tzila, and what we just explained before will explain what that machlekes is, what is behind it. There is a machlekes in Gemara Eruvin. Halolo B'Shamai Emrim. This same meaning, B'Shamai says, it's easier for a person, which simple pshat you learn means it would be better for a person that he should not have been created, better than being created. Basila say no. That it's better for a person. The Lashon is neach, literal translation is easier. But the way you learn a simple pshat, it's better for a person that he was created than he wouldn't have been created. Nimnu v'gomro, they came to account, they took a vote, and they came to a decision. Better if a person would not be created, better than it was created. And but now that he was created, make sure you do the right thing. Look into yourself and see what you're doing. You look at the Torah dort is mavuyir the pshat in the Maimon Chazal, because the Torah the Alter Rebbe explains a different pshat. Not like we said before. What's better if you should be created or not? Say zogen need teiv shalei nivra. It doesn't sound to say the Shammai says better would be not to be created. How could there be such a thing? To say it's better it wouldn't be created, as if being created doesn't give you any good. Definitely there is a teva. As we said before, for sure the neshama coming down here has a big aliyah and goes up. Now the pshat is neyach. It would have been easier if he wouldn't be created. Well, the tachas because the goal of the creation is as leyaved the garmei will kabel pras, that he shouldn't work for him, care about himself, and get reward, nor blaze l'shamash askeinik, to serve Hashem. But that's hard. So B'Shamai says it would have been easier if he wouldn't be created, even though you would gain by being created, but it's very hard because the purpose of creation is to serve and become one with Hashem. It's a very aved. Once he's neach v'kali, as it would have been easier if he wouldn't do it. That's how you learn Pshat. That's the machlek of B'Shamai. So B'Shamai says that it's easier if you would have not been created. Stelzer the said Shaila comes the question: what's the have meaning from B'Zila to sagen as neich v'kal lot mishnivri yisem mishel nivra? According to this Pshat, what's B'Zila's opinion? If we say what's better, you can say Behila holds it better not. But we said that can be. It's definitely a Maila. It's better that you create it. But Shammai said, but it would have been easier if not. Some of the Basilas, and what does the Basilas say? Till later they changed when they came to vote, came to a decision. But originally, what was the Havamina? The Basilos said that it's, according to Al Rebbe's Pshat, it's easier for a person that he was created. Why is it easier? It's a very hard Aveda when he was created. The beer and them, the explanation is like this. Leib b'shamay stakim and chatchila poshet that the ganze linie for nitzes neshama lamata is not b'shvil aliyas neshama. Rabbi Leib Yisborach. According to B'Shamai, we know for sure that the whole union of the neshama coming down here is not, like we said before, for the neshama gaining its aliyah. Rabbi Leib Yisborach. So only for the that's for sure. Ukenal, like I said before, according to B'Shamai, we said before that in order for the neshama to get an aliyah, darfman need the yirida b'peil. You don't have to actually come down. It's enough there's potential because according to B'Shamai, potential is yikir. So you don't have to come on for that. The Mele is poshut, according to B'Shamai, it's very clear. It would be easier for a person not to be created. For him, it would be easier not to be created because he doesn't gain much for himself by coming down. There's no chidush. Durch Yiridas Lamata is coming down. So he's not a Kvetis, because according to B'Shamai, the coming down is only the other part for the Eibishter, and that's hard. So B'Shamai says it would be easier if you wouldn't be created because it's very hard and you gain nothing. You yourself gain very little, that you have an aliyah because you have it b'kayach anyway. So the only thing is for the covet of the Eibishter becoming one with the Eibishter, and that is a hard job. That's what B'Shamai says. According to them, there is a place to say that it's easier for a person that was created than he wasn't created. But then they're both nicht nivra geworden, because if a person would not be created, well, their kinshaychas need gehat, so they're aliyah gdeilav and the flow in ketz. Al Rebbe said that even though the tachlis is for the Eibishter, but you do get an aliyah gdeilav and the flow in ketz, you get a very high aliyah. If the person would not be created, he wouldn't have that aliyah. And B'Shamai, and according to B'Hillel, B'Peil, what gives you that aliyah? The B'Peil. And if you wouldn't be created, then you wouldn't have it. We baldazei, and if so, is there tainig der fumet in the shoma hot from the aliyah as aggressive in the tzara neshama dosalmata. We said before, it's harder. It's harder in the shoma to do this aved is hard. But if you know that you're going to gain from it also, so you have tainig yourself, that's stronger than the pain that you have by working hard. It's easier to be created. In spite of the pain that you have by working hard, as we said before, but you're going to get the great aliyah. So you have pleasure from that. So that's what B'Hillel says, even for the person, it's easier for him. In other words, he gains more, and eventually he'll realize that this is easier. He lay near him more than if he wouldn't be created. Then he wouldn't have any connection to this aliyah. He wouldn't be created, he wouldn't have that. So B'Shamai said that it's better, easier wouldn't be created, because for him it would be easier. What does he gain by being created? Dikir is B'Keach he has. B'Shil says no, Dikir is B'Peil. So he gains from it. So he has pleasure from it. So there is something that makes it easier for him to do. But Nimru v'Gamru, he came to a decision that it's easier for a person not to be created. And even though in the Neshama coming, we said it's easier for, as we said, B'Sheila holds, because it will gain, because according to B'Shamai, he will gain not only for the Eibishter, it'll be one with the Eibishter, but he will also gain because the Iker is B'Peil, from B'Peil you gain. But the Maskone is, the conclusion is, that's not what you have to think about. Even according to B'Sheila, that's not what you should think about. A person is supposed to do his Aveda not for himself and not to get reward. Just to serve your master completely. Not to care about yourself and what higher levels you will reach. That's what the Maskana is. Even the B'Hillel agrees that even though first they said it's better, it's good for him to be, because he will have the Aveda B'Peil. But after all, the second part that we said, which is doing it for Hashem, that's the forget about yourself. And that's all the connection to what we said before. But based on what we said before, we'll understand that based on B'Keach and B'Peil, and the question is, do you gain also by coming down in this world or not? Now we could understand this machlekes. When those are the shayches for their Mishnah And this is the connection between the Mishnah concerning the beehives, the honeycombs, to the last Mishnah that Hashem will make inherit every tzaddik shayelim. Früher bringt the Mishnah plukte the Shama B'Silot says Zina Basarbekeich oder Zina Basarpil. First, the Mishnah brings the machleket argument Shama B'Silot whether what's the main thing. The whole machleket by the honey is basically what's the main thing. Bekeich or B'Pil is the main thing. The potential or is it B'Pil? Was Lefize will give when an Ort zu sagen. According to that, you would think as the As B'Silot is the Aliyas v'Schar Ha'odam the Iker Atam. If the Iker is B'Pil, according to B'Silot, you would think that when it comes to a person. And when does he gain? Because they hold the pale, so he gains by the neshama coming down. So it seems like this is a very important matter. So we would think maybe this is even more important than the second part that you're connecting to the Eibishter. Maybe it's not more important than the one, but it's equal. So you would think that. So he brings a machlekes. Machlekes b'shama says b'keir. So according to b'shama, we say coming down for yourself is not the tachlis because you're not gaining much. So what's the tachlis? Being one Eibishter. Hillel says no, the Iker is B'Peil. So we would think when it comes to schar, so your aliyah, which is your schar, maybe is also very important. More important, maybe, or at least equally important. So there the Mishnah says, just like by Nimnu V'Gomra, by the case of Machlekes, whether it's better to be easier to be created or not, which we said the Maskoni is that even Hillel holds that you do gain by coming down because B'Peil counts and you get it only down here. But the Maskona, the conclusion is, no, they all came to conclusion before that, forget about that. Think only about the Eibishter. That's when after we find the Machleket, the Shammai B'Hillel, and according to B'Hillel, it's B'Peil, comes the next Mishnah. As we explained before, the Eibishter will make inherit to those that love him, they'll give him the yesh. That means the Kula Alma for Mishnah Akademis, both opinion, everybody in the previous Mishnah, not only B'Hillel, but Shammai holds that the main thing is think about the Eibishter because yourself you don't gain. Even B'Shama, even B'Hillel, B'Hillel is the Matorah v'Tachlis Havedas Shel Neshama Lamata. The whole purpose and the goal of the Neshama serving Hashem down here, Nit Ir Schar Ve'li, is not its reward and how it will gain, nor vider Dvash from the Veirim, like the honey from the bees. L'Sagel Baleh, they do it only for the master, for their owner. So they're durchfin Ritzeina Kavanas Shel Hakadosh Baruch Hu, to accomplish the will and the purpose of Hashem was and this expresses itself when you become one with the absolute yesh, which is Hametzias Hatmitis, the Metzias, which is forever, which is infinite, which is David himself. Still, it doesn't mean that there will not be schar for the neshama. Since we came to the conclusion that this is the main thing, so you think it won't be schar. That's going to be there too. And the far bringt the B'Shur Melevi at the Hemshech HaPosek. That's when the B'Shur Melevi says Hashem will be Manch Le'ev Yesh. He brings the end of the Posek, which is V'Yitzreisehem Amalei. I will fill their treasures. The next, which are the words Vaskumt Noch Devert Lan Chalev Yesh. These are the first is Lan Chalev Yesh, which we explained before means you'll inherit, you'll become one with Hashem, and you'll be one with the Yesh HaMuchlet. Then it says V'Yitzreisehem Amalei. I will fill their Eitzer, which means, but those gates of the Eitzer Shalat Tzadikim, even in this world, they have their storages. I will fill that, which means I will give reward. So he mentions it also because the fact is we'll get reward. Hashem doesn't hold back the reward of any creature. Again, the neshama gets als nivra, not when it's one with Hashem. Even on its own entity, it's part of the creation. That's a schar. As we said before, that's not the Iker. So therefore, that it's that I fill their storages, which means that they will get the reward, bringt into the B'Shur Ben Levi in sein Etzem HaMaimer. He doesn't bring it in his statement. It doesn't say Hashem will make inherit to those the love him yesh, and he will fill their eitzes, which would mean he will get them reward. He doesn't say it. Nor blaze b'derech agav. It's by the way, bring it in the posik lehav yesh. When he brings the posik, he brings the end of the posik. But in the statement that he's making that Hashem will give him, he doesn't bring it. Why? Because what he's trying to tell us is that there be the shleimus be one with the Eibishter. The Eibishter will give him everything. But he wants to mention also that there will be schar, which is like a secondary, but it has no importance compared to the absolute truth of the Eibishter, bringt them see him, Apostle, says the Apostle, he brings it also to the end of the Apostle. Say even more, says Yedua, we know as lost love with Zain Allah Kibeshamai. In the future, it will be Allah like Bishamai. Was saying it from the Biurim, was Meken Zog, in them Zogen Api Analysis, one of the explanations we could say based on what we said before, why that, what it means that Allah will be like Bishamai. Isman Azeb and the Rodin feels our Mitzias nowadays, when we still feel our Mitzias, we feel our being. Is Allah Kibesilah. Allah is Mezog them Odom as I Naveda to take Ruf and Aliinim. Because according to Basila, we said the Aved that accomplishes something by him is also part of it, because the pale is the Ikir, and Lamaila you don't have the pale, so it's good for him to come down. So, but that's only now, because now we're still a Metzias. After all, we're still a Metzias. Shenkin lost in the future, when as the Pasuk says there will be the revelation of the honor of Hashem. All flesh together will see that Hashem spoke, everything comes from Hashem. Eden will actually become one with the absolute entity, the absolute yesh. Metzias Amit is the eternal Metzias. Then but when the Metzias and then the taka the Metzias of a person will not be at all, not even as a secondary. The ganze ruf to be blaze in yesh. And then we only that we will be one with Hashem, which is hinted in these words. When the far, therefore, the Shur Levi Gufa was wegen dem Mandelos, the Shur Levi was talking about the future. When in them Gufa in Sima Mishnayis, and that itself in the end of the Mishnayis, we mishtet lachag mar aveda, that we're talking at the end of Mishnah, I mean, you finish all the aveda. The matz of the shleimus tzaddik, in the level, in the situation where the tzaddik is complete in everything. Zokta, here he says, Nor, here he says only this one, that only because he's talking about Mashiach's time, then taka the reward for yourself will not be at all mentioned. But we just said before that, but he does bring the part of the posik as the posik. But the pale we're learning it now in this world. But he brings the end of the posik when it says, "Say mamale, I will fill their eitzers." The tzaddikim will get their eitzers, which is a mitzias. But the tachlis is lost love it, and this fits as we said before that b'shamai, according to b'shamai, it's very little gain for yourself. It's almost like only. As Hillel says, there's a gain for yourself, which is important. So the losid love, why will there be the halacha b'shamai? So I was saying here, halacha b'shamai, because then we will be that the bekayach will be the ikir. So with the bepeil of down here, as which we need as a metzias for yourself, won't be. So there will be the halacha b'shamai, and therefore when you talk about losid love, the B'shur Levi says only this one thing: the Eibishter will be manchil. They have a yesh. He gives it the yesh hamuchlet, and he makes it like an inheritance that's one with him. Because lost love it. But nowadays, there's still, he mentions also the part of the posik, it's the same amali, because nowadays, the Eibishter cares also that we should get our schar as a human being, as a person, as a yid, as a nifr down here.